Chicago's January frost still clung like white claws to the huge glass arches of Union Station. But inside the Great Hall, the temperature contrast was brutal. The artificial warmth from the old heating system mingled with the breath of thousands of rushing people, turning the vast space into a spring compressed to its limit. The wall clock read 7:45 a.m. Rush hour. Zeus, a German Shepherd K9 unit dog belonging to the Chicago Police Department, CPD, transit unit, was on his morning patrol with Officer Alex Foster. With a jet black coat accented by patches of burnt gold and a dark blue K9 vest emblazoned with white police lettering, Zeus moved like royalty among the commoners. The crowd automatically parted slightly whenever the pair passed, not necessarily out of fear, but due to the sheer gravitas emanating from the dog's calm, resolute stride. Alex thought to himself that today was shaping up to be another typically dull Tuesday. His ears were ringing from the chaotic symphony of the commute, the rapid tap of high heels on the cold granite floor, the screeching of metro trains braking sharply on the lower levels, and the booming voices of people on their phones. Everyone hurried, everyone delayed. The smell of burnt coffee, damp wool, and cheap perfume blended into the characteristic scent of busyness. Suddenly, the leather leash in Alex's hand went rigid. Zeus stopped. It wasn't the kind of stop caused by distraction from dropped food, nor the sharp pull indicating narcotics detection. It was an absolute halt, his entire body instantly turning to stone. Zeus's pointed ears stood straight up, swiveling slightly like radar to filter out noise. However, what sent a chill down Alex's spine was his line of sight. Zeus wasn't looking at the ceiling, nor at the handbags carried at adult hip level. His amber eyes were lowered, fixated on an angle just above the floor, where hundreds of pairs of feet were moving haphazardly. He didn't growl, nor bark an alarm. Instead, Zeus let out a low, vibrating hiss through his clenched teeth, a sound rumbling deep in his chest, like a pressure cooker about to explode, but being held back. Alex knew that sound well. In their 4 years together, he had only heard it twice. It was Zeus's silent warning code, an instinctive signal that only appeared when mortal danger was directly imminent, a danger that the nose couldn't smell, but which the predator's sixth sense had detected. "Zeus, what is it?" Alex whispered, his voice lost in the noise, his hands unconsciously tightening the leash until his knuckles were white. Zeus didn't respond or turn to look at his handler. Muscles beneath the sleek fur began to bunch up, rigid. He lowered his center of gravity, front paws gripping the slick stone floor, transforming his body into an arrow fully drawn on a bowstring. Alex squinted, trying to follow Zeus's intense focus. It was the intersection between the main concourse and the ramp leading down to Track 10, known as the station's bottleneck. At that moment, a train had just arrived, disgorging a massive crowd that collided with the stream of people trying to go down. It was a moving wall of humanity. Black coats, gray coats, rolling suitcases, briefcases. He scanned quickly, like a security machine. No one was holding a weapon. No bag was left unattended. No one was screaming or fighting. Just the ordinary chaos of a busy metropolis. But Zeus saw something he didn't. The dog's tension transferred to Alex like an electric current. His heart pounded against his ribs. A vague but intense sense of foreboding seized him. Something was wrong in that bottleneck. Something was obscured by the forest of moving legs. Something small and vulnerable caught between the indifferent giants. Zeus shuddered slightly, lowering his head further, almost touching the floor. His eyes didn't blink, locked onto a dark spot, amidst the quickly moving, shiny leather shoes. And then, Alex saw Zeus's hackles rise. Without a verbal command, he knew the time for observation was over. Even though he hadn't seen the threat, he knew disaster was only seconds away. Zeus was about to launch forward. There was no time for hesitation or superfluous questions. The moment Alex saw Zeus's hackles rise like sharp quills, he understood that the invisible ticking time bomb the dog sensed had begun its final countdown. Every sense of the police officer was strung taut. He let go of the leather leash he was clutching, shouting a sharp command. The sound was nearly swallowed by the station's mixed noise, yet it echoed like thunder in his four-legged partner's ears. Zeus, seek. Code 4. Code 4. In their private training language, this was not an order to attack a suspect, nor a passive drug search command. It was the emergency intervention, free rein order. It granted Zeus the authority to unilaterally decide the optimal course of action to save a life, regardless of standard procedures. The instant the command left Alex's lips, Zeus was no longer a dog on patrol. He transformed. From a statue-like stillness, the mass of coiled muscle beneath his black fur exploded with power. Zeus launched himself, not with the wild speed of a hunter, but with the cold, desperate precision of a machine, programmed for survival. He didn't run straight. He flowed. Zeus's large body weaved through the narrow gap between two rolling suitcases, angled around the swinging arm of a man in a heavy coat, and then disappeared into the dense, moving forest of legs ahead. Passengers only felt a strong gust of wind brush past their trousers, a black blur darting across their low field of vision. And before they could collect themselves to utter a curse, Zeus was 10 feet away from them. Damn it! Alex gritted his teeth, trying to push through in Zeus's direction. But he was human, and he lacked the agility of a quadruped. On his very first step, his shoulder slammed hard into a businessman holding a hot coffee cup. Coffee splashed everywhere. The man stumbled, turned back to shout angrily, creating a chain reaction of congestion. The chaos in Union Station now was like a swamp. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. Alex was trapped between walls of flesh and fabric. A bitter taste of helplessness rose in his throat. He couldn't see Zeus anymore. The dog had plunged deep into the torrent of people at the bottleneck leading down a track. 10, exactly where its gaze had been locked in the previous moments. Alex ripped the radio from his shoulder, shouting, his voice strained with urgency. Central, this is K9 unit. Request immediate. Lockdown of Track 10 concourse. Undetermined emergency situation. I repeat, lock it down now. Stop the escalators. But Alex knew that even if Central responded instantly, the momentum of thousands of people rushing to work wouldn't stop in a second. That was physics, and it was tragedy. 60 feet away, at the epicenter of the storm Zeus was rushing toward. Emily Davis's world was collapsing, and she didn't even know it. Emily was caught in a different battle, the battle with her job. With one hand, she dragged a heavy suitcase full of documents. The other clutched her phone, which was blaring intense complaints from her boss about a faulty contract. Her mind was far from this cold station, flown to a conference room on the 40th floor of a loop building. Yes, I'm on my way. I know it's important, but Emily frowned, trying to squeeze past a group of tourists standing lost in the middle of the way. Unconsciously, the fingers loosely holding her young daughter Lily's hand slackened, just for a moment, a deadly lapse of attention. Lily, the 5-year-old girl in a teal puffer coat, was struggling to take long strides to keep up with her mother. But the world at 3 feet high was completely different from the adult world. Down here, the air was stuffy, thick with the smell of lint and shoe leather. Handbags bumped into her face. Rolling suitcases ran over her toes. And then, the crowd suddenly shifted direction when a track change announcement blared. A wave of people from the left surged in, cutting across the mother and daughter's path like a flash. Flood! Mommy! Lily called out, her tiny voice swallowed by the loudspeaker. Her hand slipped from her mother's grip. Lily stumbled. She tried to lunge forward to grab her mother's gray coat, but a large man with a travel backpack wedged himself between them. The backpack slammed hard into Lily's shoulder. The impact wasn't much for an adult, but for a 5-year-old losing her balance, it was catastrophic. Lily staggered. Her foot caught on the wheel of another suitcase, and she tumbled face first onto the cold concrete floor. The world crashed down around the little girl. Lily lay prone on the floor, her knees stinging. She tried to push herself up, but immediately recoiled as a shiny black leather shoe stomped down right next to her hand. From a floor, Lily's view became terrifying. Adult feet were no longer feet. They transformed into colossal, relentlessly moving in different columns. No one looked down. Everyone looked straight ahead, at their phones, at the schedule boards. To them, the space on the floor was merely a place to put their feet. Lily screamed, "Mommy!" But her scream was drowned out by the thundering rhythm of thousands of footsteps. She instinctively curled up, hands over her head, her teal coat becoming a tiny, isolated, and about-to-be crushed speck of color amidst the gray stream of the crowd. This was what Zeus had heard. Not a scream, but the shattered silence of a disrupted, ordinary rhythm. Tension peaked as a group of commuters just off the metro train rounded the corner at high speed. They were late. They were running. Leading them was a woman in a cream trench coat, clutching a briefcase, wearing stilettos as sharp as two awls. She was looking at her watch, her face anxious. She took long, powerful strides. She had no idea that the next landing spot for that sharp heel, following the trajectory of momentum, was precisely the nape of the neck of the little girl curled up. On the floor, the distance was down to 3 steps. 2 steps. The tapping of the heel on the granite sounded like the dry, sharp hammer of a nail gun. Lily squeezed her eyes shut, her entire body trembling, waiting for a pain she couldn't imagine. Just then, a black blur tore through the low space near the ground. Zeus had arrived. In the dog's eyes, time seemed to slow down. He saw the girl in the teal coat. He saw the high heel descending. He saw other leather shoes rushing in from behind. Training instinct told Zeus he could bite the woman's coat, sleeve to pull her back, but it was too late. The momentum was too great. He could bark to warn, but it was useless. The noise was too loud, and human reaction time was too slow. He could bite the girl's coat to drag her away. Impossible. She was lying in a position that was too awkward, and dragging her could break bones or cause her to be trampled by others during the movement. There was only one way, an act contrary to the animal's natural survival instinct, yet the peak of loyalty that the K9 bloodline demanded. Zeus did not slow down. Just as he reached Lily, he executed a skillful emergency stop with his claws, creating a sharp screech on the stone floor. Then, with a decisive and heartbreakingly brave move, Zeus threw his entire body forward, twisting 90 degrees in midair and letting gravity pull him down. Thud! Zeus landed, but not on his feet. He landed squarely on top of Lily's tiny body. His 4 legs splayed out, encompassing the little girl. His massive head and broad chest became a living dome, a sturdy, living bunker shielding the child beneath. He pressed his belly tightly against Lily's back, using his 90-pound German shepherd weight to secure her, simultaneously tucking her head under his neck. And the impact occurred. The woman's high heel didn't hit Lily's neck. It slammed into Zeus's muscular shoulder blade. Yelp! Zeus let out a single, pain cry, muffled in his throat, but he did not move. He did not bare his teeth. He did not fight back. He simply tensed his muscles to absorb the next impact. The woman in high heels screamed, piercingly as her foot tripped over a large, soft yet firm, obstacle. She stumbled, falling forward, colliding into the man next to her. The sudden appearance of a massive black lump blocking the narrow passage completely fractured the flow of the crowd. What the hell? Get out of the way! Someone fell. Angry shouts erupted. Those behind couldn't stop in time. They tripped over those in front, creating a chaotic scene. Several large men nearly stepped on Zeus's back, but when they looked down and saw the black fur and the word police on the vest, they recoiled in panic, bumping into others. The large body of the K9 dog was like a solid boulder in a rushing stream, forcing the water to split. He lay still, eyes wide with vigilance, enduring the impacts from the knees, bags, and shoes of the people stumbling into him. Each impact made Zeus wince, but he absolutely refused to move from his position. Beneath Zeus's belly, Lily opened her tear-filled eyes. She no longer saw the terrifying feet. Her world had suddenly gone dark, but it was strangely warm. The slightly pungent but safe smell of dog fur enveloped her. She felt the rapid yet strong heartbeat of her guardian angel, thumping right against her back. The chaos outside began to shift from anger to extreme confusion. "Is that a dog?" a woman whispered, covering her mouth. "What is it doing? Is it hurt?" The crowd began to pull back, forming a circle, creating an oddly silent clearing in the loud station. They saw the majestic service dog lying flat on the floor, sheltering something beneath, its gaze locked on the people around with a warning yet non-hostile look. A look that said, "No one take another step." It was at this exact moment that Alex Foster finally broke through the wall of people and rushed into the circle. The sight before him made his heart clench. He saw Zeus, his proud partner, lying there, taking the blow, his shoulder slightly trembling with pain. A long scratch from the heel was clearly visible on his blue vest. But Zeus didn't care about the wound. Upon seeing Alex, he gave a tiny tail wag, his eyes softening as if reporting, "Code 4 completed. Target secure." Alex took a deep breath, an overwhelming mixture of relief and pride surging through him. He raised his hand high, signaling the crowd to move back further, his voice booming with authority, shattering the general confusion. "Everyone step back. Police, step back immediately." He knelt beside Zeus, his hand trembling as he placed it on the dog's head. "Good boy," Alex murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You did great." He gently checked Zeus for broken bones, then leaned down to look into the space beneath the dog's belly. "Little one," Alex said as gently as possible, "you're safe now. I'm a police officer. I'm going to help you out." Zeus felt his owner's presence, and he slowly lifted himself, inch by inch, carefully, as if afraid of breaking a piece of porcelain. When the large black shadow was removed, the station's neon light once again shone onto the floor, revealing Lily in her teal coat. She was still curled up, her face smudged with tears, but completely intact. Not a scratch, not a bruise. At the same moment, from the far end of the concourse, Emily Davis's gut-wrenching scream cut through every other layer of sound. Lily, the young mother, rushed in like a madwoman, hair disheveled, her expensive phone abandoned. Somewhere along the way, she pushed people aside, no longer caring about politeness or dignity. When she saw her daughter sitting there, surrounded by the police officer and the huge dog, Emily collapsed, her knees hitting the hard floor without feeling the pain. "Oh my God, Lily!" She hugged her child fiercely, holding her so tight that Alex had to gently remind her to loosen her grip. Lily burst into racking sobs, the crying releasing the long-suppressed fear. The surrounding crowd fell silent. The people who had been irritable about being late for their train were now frozen in place. The woman in high heels, who had nearly caused the disaster, stood there, pale as a ghost, her hand clutching her briefcase and trembling. She looked down at her shoes, then across at the scratch on Zeus's shoulder, and burst into tears of remorse and horror. Zeus, having completed his task, stepped back behind Alex and sat down in the standard working position. He briefly licked the painful spot on his shoulder, then looked up at the reunited mother and daughter. His ears went up again, listening to the mixed sounds of the station, ready for the next assignment, as if using his body as a living shield had been just a small part of his daily job description. But for Alex, and for the dozens who witnessed that moment, it was more than just duty. It was a miracle woven from pure loyalty and protective instinct. The space at the Track 10 concourse intersection of Union Station seemed to be choked in an eerie silence, a total contrast to the frantic noise just seconds before. Officer Alex Foster, his face flushed with exertion and anxiety, had finally broken through the wall of people to rush into the center of the chaotic circle. Before him was a sight that was both heroic and painful. Zeus, his formidable four-legged partner, was still lying flat on the cold stone floor. The dog's chest rose and fell heavily, his labored breath misting thinly in the station's cool air. His massive body with its shiny black coat and police vest maintained the posture of a sturdy breakwater, completely covering the small object beneath, the teal puffer coat. Just above Zeus's head, the woman in high heels, who had inadvertently almost caused the tragedy, stood paralyzed. Her face was as white as wax, her eyes wide with horror as she stared down at the tip of her shoe, which was only inches from Zeus's fur. She was trembling, about to take a step back in panic. "Stop!" Alex shouted, his authoritative voice ringing out, breaking the paralyzed atmosphere. He rushed over, raising one hand to stop the woman, the other placed on her shoulder to calm her, but also assertively. "Don't move. There's a child underneath. If you back up now, you might step on the child's hand." The woman let out a choked sob, nodding frantically, tears starting to spill from shock. Alex knelt down on one knee next to Zeus's head. He reached out and unhooked the safety latch on the leash, giving the dog complete freedom of movement. His hand touched Zeus's warm nape, feeling the muscles still tensed like cold steel. He leaned close, whispering into his battle partner's ear, his voice gentle, contrasting sharply with his serious police exterior. "All right, buddy. The danger is over. Code for clear. Zeus up." The up command was delivered softly but definitively. Zeus whined softly in his throat, his ears swiveling slightly toward the familiar voice. He didn't jump up immediately. With the caution of a bomb disposal expert, Zeus slowly lifted his front half first, front paws straight, creating space. Then he lifted his hips, carefully, millimeter by millimeter, ensuring his sharp claws would not accidentally touch the treasure he was protecting. As the massive black shadow of the K9 dog was lifted, the cold white neon light of the station once again shone onto the floor. And there, curled up like a small shrimp, was Lily. She opened her tear-filled eyes, her hands still clutching her head in defensive instinct. But she was completely intact. Not a scratch, not a bruise. Even the hem of her coat was clean, thanks to Zeus's large body absorbing all the dust and impact. Lily blinked, saw Alex, then looked over at the huge monster that had just been on top of her, now sitting attentively beside her, panting slightly. "Are you all right, little one?" Alex asked, his voice shaking slightly. Before Lily could answer, a heart-rending scream echoed from the end of the concourse, piercing through all the noisy layers of the Chicago station. "Lily!" It was the scream of a mother whose instinct told her the worst. Emily Davis rushed in like a whirlwind. She had abandoned everything. The suitcase full of important documents lay haphazardly in the middle of the floor, her expensive phone dropped and shattered somewhere. Now, she was not a senior consultant. She was simply a mother in utter panic. Emily pushed aside a large man blocking her way. The force of her fear made her aggressive. When she broke through the circle of onlookers and saw her daughter sitting on the floor, her worldview tilted. For a split second, she had imagined blood, ambulance sirens, but the reality before her made her sink down in relief. "Mommy!" Lily burst into loud sobs, her clear child's cry sounding like a saving grace. Emily rushed to her, hugging her daughter, squeezing her tightly as if trying to merge the child back in her own body for protection. She kissed her hair, her forehead, feeling her limbs to check every inch. "Are you okay? Does anything hurt? Oh God, I'm so sorry, darling." Emily sobbed, tears blurring her perfect office makeup. Alex took a step back, giving the mother and daughter privacy, but his eyes continued to monitor the situation. He raised his hand to his shoulder radio. "Central, this is K9 Foster. Situation at Track 10 is contained. A child was lost and fell, now safely protected. Request a medical team for preliminary check, just in case." Clear. While Emily comforted her daughter, the surrounding crowd began to recover. Murmurs and conversations rose, shifting from curiosity to amazement and admiration. They started to realize that what they had just witnessed was not a police dog attack, but an extraordinary act of saving a life. The woman in high heels was still in shock. She knelt down next to Emily and Lily, her hand trembling as she touched Emily's shoulder. I'm so sorry, she stammered, her voice cracking. I didn't see. I was rushing. If the dog hadn't been there, I would have. She couldn't bring herself to finish the sentence. The thought that her sharp heel could have slammed into the soft skull of the child made her feel sick. Emily looked up, her red eyes looking at the woman, then at Alex, and finally her gaze settled on Zeus. The K9 dog had now returned to work mode, sitting straight, chest out, ears erect, and listening, his expression stoic and alert. But if one looked closely, they could see a long scratch on the shoulder pad of his vest, and the fur on his right shoulder was slightly matted, where he had taken the impact of the heel. Emily released her daughter, slowly crawling on her knees toward Zeus. "Officer," she said to Alex, her voice hoarse, "may I touch him?" Alex smiled, a rare and warm smile. "Of course, Mom. His name is Zeus. He's very gentle with people he just saved." Emily extended a trembling hand. Zeus, as if sensing the woman's profound gratitude, bowed his large head. He gently nudged his cold, wet nose into Emily's palm, letting out a small, friendly whine, his tail giving a slight thump on the stone floor. In that moment, Emily wept harder. She wrapped her arms around the police dog's furry neck, burying her head against his sturdy chest. Thank you for saving my child," she whispered repeatedly, tears soaking Zeus's black fur. "You're my savior. You're an angel." Lily, having stopped crying, curiously came closer, reaching out her tiny hand to stroke Zeus's ear. The dog gently licked her cheek, an awkward but affectionate gesture that caused the surrounding crowd to let out emotional gasps. Many had pulled out their phones, not to record for likes, but to capture the beautifully human moment amidst the chaos of Chicago. When a medical team arrived a few minutes later, they confirmed that Lily was completely fine, only mildly frightened. However, Alex asked them to check Zeus as well. "He's limping slightly," Alex quietly told the medic, pointing to Zeus's front right leg. After palpation, the medic nodded, just a soft tissue bruise on the shoulder. Quite a strong impact, but his muscle mass and vest absorbed most of the force. This guy's tough as rock. A few days of rest and some ice packs, and he'll be fine. Alex breathed a sigh of relief. He squatted down, rubbing Zeus's sides vigorously as a reward. "Good job, partner. You're getting steak tonight." At this point, an older man in the crowd, seemingly a veteran, approached Alex. He looked at Zeus with deep respect and asked, "Officer, I've seen K9's attack, seen them sniff out drugs, but I've never seen a dog that knew to lie down and shield someone like that. Do you train at exercise?" Alex stood up, adjusting the leash, looking at Zeus with pride, and answered, his voice loud enough for those nearby to hear, "No, sir. We train them to bite sleeves. We train them to pull victims from rubble." But in this situation, Zeus decided for himself. Alex looked around at the attentive crowd. If Zeus had tried to bite the girl's coat and pull her away in this cramped space, she could have dislocated her shoulder or still been tripped over by others. If he had just barked, people would have panicked and stampeded. Zeus chose the only way to become the obstacle. He knew he was large. He knew he had the vest. And he accepted the pain so the child could be safe. That wasn't a lesson in a textbook. That was the protective instinct of a soldier. Alex's explanation hushed the space in admiration. Emily Davis hugged her daughter tighter, looking at the dog as if looking at a living saint. She knew that if it had been a human security guard today, they might have screamed, tried to push the crowd back, but they might not have dared to use their own body as a cushion for her child so quickly. Only the absolute loyalty and selfless reflex of a dog could perform this miracle. The crowd began to disperse as the loudspeaker announced the next train departures. Chicago's hectic life resumed its cycle. But those present, especially the woman in high heels and Emily and her daughter, would carry the memory of this morning forever. Alex led Zeus away from the scene, heading toward the unit break room. The dog limped slightly, but his head was still held high with pride. "Let's go, Zeus," Alex whispered. "Mission accomplished." Zeus looked up at his owner, his amber eyes shining brightly under the station lights. He gave a short, resounding bark like a farewell to the battlefield he had just conquered, not with fangs and claws, but with a great, courageous heart. Outside Union Station, the frost had begun to melt, giving way to weak but warm sunbeams filtering through the skyscrapers, shining down on the city that had just been saved by a silent, four-legged hero.